Hello and welcome to our latest edition of Claret and Blue. We're joined by an expert, a bona fide, genuine expert today to talk about Aston Villa's exciting new kit launch. Rob, friend of the show, before you come in, or as you come in, can you outline your expert credentials, please, for me?
Yeah, so I originally studied fashion design, but always had a real kind of slant towards sportswear. And so at the start of my career, I spent 13 years or so designing football kits, originally with Puma, then with Umbro. So I designed the Italy kit that won the World Cup in 2006. And I've also designed for England, Manchester City for the famous Aguero moment, Cameroon products that were banned by FIFA, all sorts of things. So yeah, I've been around the football industry for a long old time. I'm
sure you've had plenty of opportunity to cast your expert eye over the new Villa kit. What's your first impression, Rob?
It's good. It looks like a proper Villa kit, which I think certainly for me and probably many other fans as well, I think knowing that Adidas were going to be coming in and working with the club, there was a bit of a concern that it might look like a West Ham kit, because West Ham had so many great looking Adidas kits in the 70s and 80s. But first impressions are it very much feels like a Villa kit, whether that's the narrow stripes through the collar, the way they've not used those additional shards of colour that have shown up on the body of some of the other kits, right the way through to the tones of claret and blue that they've used. I think it just looks and feels like a Villa kit.
Does it make you smile sometimes when the reaction comes out? And obviously, you've got a considered eye. I'm not saying that if you love it and everybody else hates it, I'm not saying that's necessarily right. But do you see some kind of weird take sometimes when you see some of the concept kits made and when you see the real one arrive?
Yeah, definitely. I think with some of the concept kits, some of them are good, bad, indifferent. Some of them are amazing, but working in the industry and you know how much it costs to make kits in a certain way, then yeah, some of the concept ones, it just wouldn't be feasible to actually make a kit in that way. It just wouldn't work.
How important are these different kind of elements when you've almost got to kind of crowbar them on the kit? You know, you want it to look classic and you want it to look stylish, but ultimately you're slaves to whatever your sponsor's logo are.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is something that's probably troubled Villa in terms of the kit designs that we've had over the years. Is so much of it has been fairly last minute, at least in football kit design terms. So whether that's the deal with the brand or the sponsorship deal itself, changing the crest. This time out, we've got all three. It does make an impact. I remember myself designing a Lazio kit back in probably 2004, I think, and it looked great. It was black. It had got electric blue highlights on it. The sponsor logo was supposed to be Siemens Mobile because that's what they'd had for ages. And then the deal with Siemens just got cancelled, and then they quickly changed it to a company called Parma Cotto that I think make Parma ham and delicatessen meats. And instead of having this plain white sponsor logo across the front of it, it was kind of mauve and mustard yellow. So it looked dreadful and just ruined the whole kit. So yeah, it is a good example of sometimes things are just out of your control as a designer. But I think this time we've got quite fortunate that the sponsor logo is pretty plain and simple and easy to work with.
My inner kind of Homer Simpson monologue now is just thinking, Parma ham and mustard. Adidas or Adidas? What are you? Are you an Adidas man?
No, I pronounce it properly, so it's Adidas.
Good man. We're on the same page.
It's literally it's a shortened of Adolf Dassler, which was the founder's name, and Adi is short for Adolf. So that's literally how it's put together. Adidas, Adi Dassler.
Yeah, don't let me start on my after dinner. I did a acronym again to spell Adidas. We've done that before. But we've landed a real classic brand, and we've also landed a really lucrative sponsorship deal. I know we tried to sneak that under the radar, if you like, before betting firms are kind of outlawed on the front of Premier League tops. But we seem to be really mixing in the type of circles that we need to be now, don't we, to compete where we want to stay competing?
Yeah, definitely. I think the Adidas deal, not just the fact that we're working with them or that they want to work with us, but the level of treatment that I think we can expect from them. The kit launch video that we've seen today that's superb and has gone viral. That would have taken a lot of organising, a lot of expense to put together. So that in itself speaks volumes. Just the little things that might seem fairly simple to the average fan, but like having that striping detail on the collar, having a player version and a replica version, they're all signs that as a club we're taken seriously. We're not necessarily dining at the top table with the likes of Real Madrid just yet, but we're definitely being taken seriously and treated like a proper asset. And you think of the amount of money that gets spent by brands like Adidas, particularly Nike. They can choose whoever they want to work with within a reason. And so the fact that they've chosen Villa shows that they also have a long-term belief in where the club's going and what it will do for their brand. It costs them a lot of money to have their logo show up on us. They certainly don't make that money back through kit sales. They're doing it because it's the best representation of their brand.
You mentioned before about Aston Villa leaving things late, whether it's the manufacturer, whether it's the sponsor and that kind of. This has still had to be hurried based on the fact that the Castore agreement didn't. How can I put this delicately?
Didn't continue as planned.
Well, yeah, exactly, perfectly, yes. So do you think? I mean, I'll ask you a little bit about the way that things went with Castore in a moment, but do you think that things can only get better and better the more that kind of Aston Villa and Adidas work together as partners?
Yeah, definitely. I think having a long-term deal with anybody makes it a lot easier to be more predictable around when kits are going to be launched or what the plans are going to be for it. So that's a big help. A brand like Adidas, without falling into the typical German efficiency tropes, they're incredibly well organised and put together. There's so many people would work on the project across football within Adidas and making sure things are done on time, delivered on time, signed off on time. There's a huge amount of back and forth. The process starts with research into the club and the fans, into what the players need. Then it turns into a brief for the design team. The designers work on it, has to get internal sign-off, presented to the club. There'll be feedback. There's so many steps and stages, but the more carefully that's managed, the less likely it is to cause a problem. I mean, typically you would look at around a year and a half for a design to go from brief to actually being on sale to the fans. And we know that absolutely wasn't the case this time. So I would anticipate that next season's Adidas kits are pretty far down the line in terms of being signed off and getting into real prototypes and dyeing up fabric.
Bit of a random aside, but you know me well enough and you know the podcast well enough. I've only just noticed Gizmo over your
the old Gizmo skateboard. Yeah.
This is really bad. This is really unprofessional. Can I do my quick Gizmo impression?
You can, but my business partner, Craig, who will listen to this, is the king of the Gizmo whistle. It's not bad. It's not bad.
Where was I? So, is it Castore? I should know this. Or Castor. What's your thoughts now that that's been kind of pushed to one side and we've moved on? Do you think it's just they'll learn from the experience, we'll learn from the experience, or how do you sum it up?
In terms of Villa learning anything from it, it's very difficult. I wouldn't expect anybody at the club to have the knowledge or understanding to really be looking at fabrics and say, oh, I worry that's going to get wet or cling to the player's skin. To be fair, we saw it on some of the Adidas kits in the Euros as well, where, really high humidity conditions, it was getting wet and clinging to the players. What I've seen, I've not had my hands on the Villa shirt yet, but I was in the Adidas store in London last week, and the club shirt seemed to be a slightly different fabric with more texture to it, so it won't cling to the body in the way that, or shouldn't cling to the body in the way that some of those national shirts did. I would think from Castore's perspective as well, then they're a young brand. They've done incredibly well. When were they founded? Like 2016, 2017. So they've done so well and come so far. And I just feel like, they've had a fairly rough time of it because of a fabric problem that perhaps couldn't have foreseen it just from touching the material. But then it just wasn't quite tested to the extent that they probably would have liked. So, yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting to see how Everton get on in Castore kits this season.
Do you think there will be a time where football, it's so important, the feel of a kit when people are training, when people are playing in it, that they almost have their own specialist, kind of works within the club to make sure that those things are just so?
Yeah, potentially. I mean, there are some clubs within the Premier League now that do have a creative director, which historically would have been pretty much the preserve of kit launches, or what's the typeface or the badge, or what does the front of the program look like. They do get more involved now with the kit design itself for certain clubs. So, yeah, I mean, I think depending on who you're working with and the work that they're doing would then determine whether there was a need for that level of expertise within a club. Certainly, I think if Villa ever felt that they wanted my help in working with anything as they were going through the development process with Adidas, yeah, I'd be more than happy to. And I've got good relationships with a few of the guys over in Germany as well. So, yeah, I'm sure they'd welcome me getting involved and throwing in my €6 worth.
We'll leave Rob's contact details in the description. But if we're on the Claret and Blue, might have stitched up any chances of you ever doing that. But I mean, obviously, it's a stick that's used to beat Villa with quite often, in terms of other people tend to have their kits available for the early pre-season friendlies, and you can buy them a lot sooner than this. I think Villa sometimes have to wait until, I call it that time of year, when you used to get your league ladders in shoot. Yeah. We're approaching that time. So I think people would probably welcome the shirts coming a month earlier, perhaps, so they can go on the holidays in them and that kind of thing. But give us a sense of what it's like. It's not just as easy as getting those lovely shiny shirts on the shelves this morning, is it?
No, totally. And I think with this year as well, it's interesting that we consider it as being late. I think there's a certain amount of impatience as well, and not just with Villa fans, right across the board, where it's almost like kids wanting their Christmas presents on, in Holland they open them on the 6th of December. So, whatever it might be, fans are like that, and there's a little bit of bragging rights now around the reveal, the kit itself. Everyone's desperate to see the leaked one, or to have the inside information as to what's going on. That all plays a role, but a lot of team kits haven't been launched yet for the Premier League, or aren't commercially available. And then you've got the other factor of the Euros and the Copa America. So if you think of it purely from a brand's perspective, like an Adidas, they want those kits to have the breathing space to be able to show up on field, win trophies, whatever else. And then also from the factory's perspective, you've got to push all that stuff through the same sort of factory. It's not that, as we've touched on, the Villa deal was probably later than anybody would have liked ordinarily. And you think of the other teams that somebody like Adidas is working with, how many Real Madrid shirts get made, Manchester United, Arsenal, Juventus, Bayern Munich, all going through the same set of factories, all being made from the same material that's got to be knitted together. It's got to be dyed. The colour of the dye stuff's got to be approved by the club. It's got to meet the quality that it's not going to wash out, etc. It's just massive, and nobody's sitting on their hands waiting for Adidas to show up and say, "Oh, we've brought in Villa with their couple of 100,000 units or whatever we sell." To give it perspective of the queue that was already in place and planned to go through those factories. Numbers suggested that when Man United signed Zlatan Ibrahimovic, they sold 1 million shirts just with his name on. And it takes a long time to sew 1 million football shirts together.
It's the first time I'd have really thought about that queue at the factory, because my son will be nagging me to get the new shirt for him. And I've spoken about this before, so I'm going on an old man rant, but there is this kind of microwave meal mentality where people just want something immediately, whether it's the new shirt, whether it's the new signing. And there has to be a degree of due diligence, because they'll be the first people to complain if these things aren't up to scratch when they arrive. So
totally. I think if you compare it, because I know you like your analogies, if you compare it to, if you walk in a restaurant and a party of 20 has just sat down and placed their order, you're going to be waiting a long time for your meal.
Yeah.
So imagine if instead of a party of 20, it's every single person that's just ordered a Real Madrid shirt, and you've got to wait for theirs to be made before yours. You know, that is the reality of it. You know, factories have to be put together in a way that orders can be processed sequentially, and then getting it across from Asia, you're looking at 6 weeks on a boat, because yes, you could fly it, but it costs a fortune, especially, again, just for villas. How many aeroplanes full is it to put 250,000 football shirts on aeroplanes and fly it across? So, you know, there's so much goes into the logistics of it.
How many shirts could Villa realistically expect to sell over the course of a season?
I would anticipate, and I'm not privy to the numbers, I would anticipate that depending on how well we do, they'd probably be looking at 200 to 250,000, I would say, globally. Maybe a little bit less. I might be erring on the generous side there. But that's where I would expect us to be sitting, alongside the likes of probably an Everton, maybe less than Tottenham. I think once you start signing the big players and playing in the big competitions, which is, you know, what we're stepping into now, then yeah, things change. People, even Villa fans that wouldn't normally buy a shirt or wouldn't buy one on day one, will probably get involved today. There's a feel-good factor around the club. It's a brand that people like. They've wanted to see Villa kit made by Adidas. So yeah, the numbers can only really go north from here, you would like to think.
I'm an Adidas fan. I've got some of my 3-stripe tracksuits that are tucked away up there, you know, from the original kind of 1990s ones, where probably just about fit. But in terms of football, I've not bought a Villa replica shirt, kind of an up-to-date current one, for absolutely years. Rob, I mean, listen, between you and me, I'm a man with generous moves. Should I resist it? What do you think?
No, go for it. Just make sure you buy the right size. And with that, I would say, don't, and this goes for anybody with any clothes really, don't vanity size. It's not, you know, oh, well, I'm a medium, so I'm going to wear a medium. You can tell when you look in the mirror if it fits you or not. Don't worry about the label in the back. I think if you are somebody who's more generously proportioned, then it's probably worth looking more at the replica shirt rather than the player's version, because obviously an extra large fan is a very different body type than an extra large Premier League footballer. And it is more noticeable in the larger sizes. Back in my Puma days for clubs like Tottenham, we actually used to do three different fits. So we had the athlete version, and then we had a replica version, and then we did a Brit fit. Because the extra large British fans are very different than extra large fans from Italy, France, and Germany. So, yeah, I think you can, but just be kind to yourself when you're standing in front of the mirror, and be kind to anybody else that might see you in a football shirt.
Yeah, definitely don't need the spray-on version, I can tell you. What are Adidas fits like generally? Are they, you know, there used to be the stigma, didn't there, about Kappa? That used to be a particularly tight fit, but are Adidas kind of fairly standard, or?
Yeah, I would expect them to fit true to size, really. So generally, if you're a large in most brands, then you would be a large in Adidas. Some of the things to look out for is really the word fit and how they describe it. So is it described as a regular fit or an athletic fit or whatever else, a slim fit? And then you'll get a sense that, just like with anything else you might buy, if it's a slim fit and you're not a slim person, you might want to size up from your regular size. But yeah, Kappa were obviously, it's their thing, has been for almost 25 years now, to be doing tight fitting shirts, whereas that's not Adidas's thing. So I would expect that if you were buying a large polo shirt from Marks and Spencer's, I would expect you'd probably be all right in a large football shirt from Adidas.
Kit launch day is the equivalent of Christmas Day, isn't it, for football fans now in the calendar? What did you think of that launch video?
Brilliant, just absolutely class. And I think not just because of the fact that it's got Ozzy and Geezer Butler in it. I think some of the other details that just show the attention to detail and the insight that I think we can expect from Adidas and from the club going forward. We saw the first sense of that attention to detail at the end of May when the club launched the new crest, love it or hate it, but the identity with the name and numbering and some of the indication of the background where that had come from. In the video today, you'd got somebody putting on a Savo-style bandana. There's a little split clip of one of the away fan traffic cones running across the road in front of a car. So stuff that it's kind of, if you know, you know. And I think something that I picked up on across those two videos that I've just referenced was in the new badge launch, they really highlighted and showed the multiple lines in the collars, in the necklines of shirts that we'd had in the past, and how that had led them to do a dual outline on the shirt and whatever. And then we've seen those multiple stripes show up on the collar again this time around. So I think as much as it's a beautiful bit of entertainment to look at and it feels nice and we can be proud of it, for me in the industry, it's also an indicator of the level of attention that we're going to get inside the club and inside the brand of making sure things are consistent and insightful and mean something to Villa fans. They're not just claret and blue clothes anymore. Dan Rowlinson, bless him. I'm only a journalist of 25 years repute, but he thought he'd prepped me properly by giving me several questions in case I forgot to ask them. Flicking down the list here, and I'll read it as Dan's written. The claret looks darker, ... Tee up Rob for Buffon story. Yeah, perfect. Excellent. Good work, Dan. Yeah, I mean, I think if we compare it, and it was something that I did in a video previously where we looked at Villa shirts of the past, and I was like, look how different all these badges are. Look how different all these clarets are. You know, it's just crazy. We didn't have the consistency, and certainly compared to even the one that we've just worn, you know, certainly when it was dry, it wasn't proper claret. It changed a bit as it got wet. And that just felt really, really important, that it speaks to us, you know, that very specific colour that we've got. In terms of the Buffon story, I've never designed a Villa kit, but I always used to try and slip Villa references in where possible. So when Italy won the World Cup in 2006 in the kit that I was obviously delighted to have had a hand in designing, one of the things that I did, so I was working with a girl who was a Burnley supporter as well, so she was complicit in it, Brian, where we put the coaching staff and Gigi Buffon in claret and blue, so it was proper claret and navy. So even I think for the final, I think he might have worn the gold one for the final. I should remember that really. But in some of the other matches, he wore the claret shirt, and then you can see the coaching staff when they run on the pitch after penalties, where some of them are wearing the claret and blue training line. So I gave them some story about it all being to do with the red wines of Italy and whatever else. But it's now actually become something of a tradition, and they've had claret goalkeeper shirts a few times since. So the legend lives on. There were a couple of other things around England kits as well, where I worked with another Villa fan, a graphic designer called Paul Barnes, and he came in and did the name and number set for me for something at Puma and at Umbro. And the one that we did at Puma was called Gabriel, named after Gabby Aguilar, because at the time he was breaking through into the England team. And then the typeface that we did for the white and red England shirt that we worked on together, that was called Vorton, which was named after Howard Vorton, the first Villa player to ever play for England. So, yeah, we've managed to slip in a few Villa-related references into clubs that wouldn't otherwise have them over the years.
I love those little nods, because you hear the stories, don't you, when you got people kind of working on building sites and they just like drop a Villa scarf into the foundations at a new stand at St Andrews, or they'll draw something on the wall on the plasterboard on a new build and that kind of stuff. But I love that it extends beyond brickies into the design industry.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, I suppose the elephant in the room with all this excitement around kits is they're not cheap, are they? Rob, to be honest, there'll be pressure. There'll be families with several kids. There'll be where the dad wants a top, 2 or 3 of the kids want a top. It ends up being kind of mega pricey. I mean, what's your thoughts as somebody who works within the industry, who knows their way around all the materials and all the planning stages that has to go into this? What's your kind of your thoughts on the price that these things retail at the moment?
Over the years, my thoughts on it have changed, even within the last 24 months, because it feels like the prices have rocketed. I think that the first thing to say about it is there is a lot more cost and a lot more complexity that goes into making a football shirt. I think, yeah, just the level of the cost of signing a team, paying royalties to people. A regular T-shirt doesn't have a badge, 2 sponsor logos, whatever else on it. They all cost money. So that's a factor. I think having a version for the players isn't a new thing. That's been going on for over 20 years with the bigger brands as well. So I think the choice is there as to whether you want the exact one the fans are wearing or not. I think where I would be critical of brands is the price of the replica and how different a replica shirt is compared to the authentic or the pro one, and then the life cycle of the shirt as well. So first season of the Premier League, a Villa shirt would have cost you 30 quid, which, now sounds, like nothing. But back then, I remember that was a big punt. My Villa shirts were a Christmas present rather than something I got in the summer. But they tended to last for 2 years as well. Whereas now it's a whole new set of what was 2 every season. Now it's 3. Some clubs do 4. And even adjusted for inflation, 30 quid in 1992 would be about 65 quid now, which feels about right given all the factors that go into it compared to a normal top. I know a lot of people will buy counterfeit, will state that the quality of counterfeits is very good. I think that quality is perhaps in the eye of the beholder a little bit. There's rules that brands have to work with in terms of restricted substances, chemicals, whatever else that they can't put into fabrics, into dye stuffs that make it a bit more expensive. The prices that I see quoted for what people would pay for a fake shirt, being honest, is probably about what the brands are paying the factory for a shirt. So there is a big difference. If you're not paying the price, somebody else is. It funds terrorism and can fund people trafficking. It is essentially organised crime. But I can understand why people would turn a blind eye to that, because like you said, Matt, it's a lot of money. And I think parents are under a lot of pressure, kids are under a lot of pressure to fit in. And I think this time of year, there is a responsibility on the clubs and the brands to be able to look at it, and perhaps say, well, is there more we can do around the life cycle? If the price is the price, what can we do? Thinking back even 20 years, a home kit might last 2 years, and then the away kit and third would alternate. So you'd get a new home kit one season, a new away the next, then that had become the third kit the following season, and you got more life out of it. And I think, as much as today is a joyous day for most Villa fans, and we get to see the new kit, and we've seen big queues outside Villa Park of people queuing up to buy it. There's a lot of parents that will be feeling the pressure today and aren't in a position to be able to do that. So if I may be so bold as to drop a couple of little links in there, I think if you are somebody who's feeling under pressure financially or with your mental health, and football can be a release, and you're finding that the pricing's pushing you away, don't suffer in silence. There's a couple of organisations, the Calm Zone, are particularly good at helping people with struggling with mental health problems. And then there's another organisation that's quite closely affiliated with football and football shirt culture called Mind, Body and Soul, who do some great work. They even help people pay the bills when they're stuck. I don't know if they stretch as far as paying for football shirts for people, but yeah, it's difficult. And as somebody in the industry, I feel a bit of responsibility to be able to kind of partly give some context as to where some of the cost comes from, but also to acknowledge that, yeah, I do think it's gone too far. I mean, a couple of years ago, we were 60 quid, 65 quid. We're now up to 80 to 85, depending on the brand, 120 to 135 if you want the player one. It's a lot of cash for something that for a lot of people is a must-have item.
Yeah, and like I say, we're talking probably, 55, 60 quid for the kids version as well.
Yeah.
And Will, I think you're absolutely right to alert people to those charities, Rob, and we'll make sure that we do genuinely drop the links to those in the description here. Just an interesting thing that you talk about, obviously, when you say the life cycle, you mean how often a new kit is bought in to supersede it. What's the kind of staying power of these kits in terms of, like, whatever the kit is that's been released today, if my lad wants to wear it, bless him, if he's still slim enough, he's 16 now, if he's still slim enough in 10 years to wear it as a retro, are they built to last? Are they built to be kind of washed umpteen times and so
They
on?
are, yeah. I mean, that was one of the main things that drove the switch from cotton to polyester with football shirts in the first place, was the durability of polyester and synthetic fibres. It holds on to colour really well. So, it shouldn't wash out. I think there are certain things that you can do to take care of the products. Obviously, wash, and this is true for any of your clothes. Wash it as cool as you can get away with. Unless you're a proper stinky animal, you're walking into the whole pub honking like an angry goose, then you don't need to be boil washing any of your clothes. 30 should be absolutely plenty. There are detergents out there that will wash even in a cold wash now. Don't tumble dry football shirts, and try to avoid, if you do your own washing, or if you don't, speak to the person that does the washing for you. Don't put fabric softener in with football shirts or anything that's got the heat transfers, or what fans might call stickers, on, because high temperatures, fabric softeners, whatever, that's what will cause the glue to kind of soften up and come unstuck, and that's where you start getting badges falling off and whatever else. But yeah, otherwise, especially now there's no smoking on the Holt end anymore either. I remember coming back from matches with my proudly earned Villa shirt that had got fag burns all over the back of it from celebrating goals and whatever. So those days are thankfully pretty much over. But yeah, if you take care of it, then there's no reason why you can't have a good life out of it. It just won't be a current one for as long as perhaps it should be.
I love that. Washing, laundry advice as well.
That's everything today.
Parent Room podcast. As we've said earlier in the podcast, it's still had to be thrown together quite quickly against a tight time frame. What can we expect, do you think, going forward with working with a brand like this?
What I would expect is that the consistency will be there. So, there'll be a lot of stuff that's been done quicker than perhaps they would have liked. We've talked about the dyeing of the fabrics takes a long time. Things like that. I would expect that we'll get that level of consistency. Obviously, we don't know what plans they've got for us in terms of the lifestyle products that we've seen them do for other teams over the last few months, which is really exciting. Some of the originals products and stuff that they've done, I would expect that we'll get that. Typically, season one with a new brand isn't a huge amount of kind of whiz bang in terms of the kits, because you don't need to. People are excited enough that it's a new kit. Whereas once you start getting into years 2 and 3 and some of that novelty is worn off, is where you've then got to start thinking about, well, what are the graphics? What are the other stories that we can tell, particularly on away and third kits? So I would like to see some of that developing. We look at the most recent Arsenal kit that's inspired by a lot of the African fans and African players that Arsenal have had, and they did a big launch around that in the Adidas store in London last week. I would expect to see that sort of thing, for the level that we're operating at as a club, and the level that we're held at within Adidas, would be just more insightful storytelling across the product. More of those things like I don't know if the guy dressed as a traffic cone is going to ever show up on a kit, but we saw him in the video. But more of those little nods that just cement the relationship between the brand and the club and the fans, saying, yeah, we get it, we understand Aston Villa. So for me, I think it's going to be a really, really exciting period that probably as fans we've never had in terms of kit suppliers and everything that goes with it.
I think the one defining factor that ultimately has very little to do with the designers, but if we can go and win something in this kit, it'll just cement that kind of status forevermore, won't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, it does. That makes all the difference. And I think that's where we talked about the numbers earlier. That's what makes a big difference on how many you sell, and also the gamble that the retailers take in buying them and stocking them up. Do you buy 500,000 and think we might get to the Champions League semi-finals, or do you play it safe and think we're going to finish fourth again? But only time will tell.
Well, now that you've given me the advice of what size to buy anyway, they may, if Mrs. Kendrick lets me, they may have made one more sale anyway. So, listen, you've been listening to me, Matt Kendrick, and our kit expert and big friend of the show, Rob Warner, talking about, I don't think it used to be quite as an exciting a fixture on the calendar as it is now, new kit launch day, but Villa fans, just another reason to be buzzing and full of excitement about following our great club. So, until next time, thank you very much, Rob, and up the Villa.